Well, ladies and gentlemen, today I wanted to take a look at Donald Trump's current approval rating, where it's going, where I think it'll trend. We've got Trump right now on his Middle Eastern tour. He was in Saudi Arabia yesterday. They got around $600 billion in total commitments, a huge number of defense contracts. Like they said, Saudi Arabia is buying around 152, $162 billion in military and defense contracts. And then we've got Qatar now, where Trump is currently Qatar buying a bunch of Boeing planes. So Trump is on his trip. He says it's around $1 trillion in total between Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. But we've got an update. We understand the economy looking relatively well. Recently, with several big indicators, liberals expecting heavy inflation because of Liberation Day. To this point, it has not come. Now, we are still watching it. I do think, based off of some of the numbers I saw yesterday, including the 10-year yield spiking again to around 4.5%, the Fed will be forced not only to cut interest rates, but also to start QE, which I know people will say, well, it's inflationary. When you have the inflation under control like we do right now, the administration has the trueflation sitting at around 1.6. You've got the core inflation at a low, lows we haven't seen since 2021. And so when you've got all this stuff, hopefully inflation can even be a little bit lower headed in for the next few months. And then we get the Fed cuts and maybe we get QE starting. But I think the economy is going to be in a great spot. We're going to break this down and really look at this. So you can see this recent poll. This is a B plus pollster saying Trump is basically 50-50. We know that they had put out polls. All of the big time liberal mainstream networks said, well, let's really jam it down Trump's throat. And that sounded wrong, but they basically said, we're going to manipulate the numbers to make Trump look really bad in terms of his first 100 days, because that's like a ceremonial thing. And so that's exactly what they did. And the numbers were not good, but now they're starting to rebound already. So you can see a lot of it was warped samples, but now Trump's at basically 50-50. That's with a generic ballot plus 3 Dem. When it comes to the generic ballot polls, it wouldn't surprise me if Dems were, I mean, to me, it's like a margin of 1.5. It's just based off of who won the 2024 election. Normally, the other party tends to do well in the midterms, although we didn't see that in 2022. Although you could also say there was an added component, an added ingredient, if you will, in terms of the Roe v. Wade. So I don't know if we're going to get that, but I also don't think it's a guarantee that the Dems do very well in terms of the midterms. Honestly, it doesn't really matter considering, well, it does matter, but they're not going to get the Senate. So they may get the House narrowly, but they're not going to get the Senate based on the seats up, based on the Republican advantage currently. You're looking at anywhere from like 53 to 55 seats, I think, for Republicans on a really bad night. The worst that they can do, I believe, is 51 seats, but I think even that would be like 52, 53. So you can see even in something like this where Trump is sitting, or the Republicans are sitting in a generic ballot down 3, that's a -3 environment. You've got Trump basically even in terms of approval. So, and then you take a look at the overall composite. This is really what people should be looking at. There are a number of different composites. I know 538 has another one. You could say, well, they're taking into account too many liberal polls. But even in something like this, we're starting to see you can see all the flood of these polls happening in late April. These were all the 100-day polls from CBS, Daily Mail, Reuters, Yahoo. All of these are going to need to be updated. These are all minus double digits. So -10, -12, -10, -11. And now you've got the newer polls coming out. Rasmussen, who does like a daily poll, but they've averaged it out over into an aggregate over the course of 6 days with a sample of 1,500. They've got Trump sitting +5. They are a more Republican pollster, but we know, at least when it comes to, this is a little bit different in terms of approval, but when it comes to the general election, Atlas, I would expect them to do a poll relatively soon. I know they did do a poll, but it was a while ago for Trump's approval rating. Yeah, they had Trump sitting -6. Maybe they do one every month. Maybe they'll be coming out with their next one here soon. But it'll be interesting to see if that improves at all. But what we're seeing is, and you can just see it depicted right here, Trump sitting -7.2. That's late April. And it's already come back about 3 points in the span of 2 weeks. So, and that's not to say, well, the trend's going to continue for sure. But based off of the lag period that we know these polls have, we are receiving better economic news. The stock market is rebounding very well, and we're keeping inflation down. And on top of that, you have Trump's newfound, at least he's going for peace within the Middle East. He's trying to create some type of agreement with Russia and Ukraine. That's going to be very hard. We'll see if he'll be able to do it. But it seems like I've been saying for a while, there's all these things in the pipeline. Well, now they're starting to come to fruition. They really are. If we can get the peace between Russia, Ukraine, the Middle Eastern situation, if it gets worked out, I've heard some dueling reports on Trump and what he wants to happen between Israel and Palestine. But with Iran, hopefully there's some type of nuclear deal there. I think that'd be a huge win for the administration just when it comes to an average American and how they view it from their lens. Trump right now, and then you've got the trade deal. Well, there's no trade deal, but there potentially will be a trade deal with China now with a timeline, a 90-day timeline, which adds more understanding to the market to where they realize, well, there's probably going to be trade deals. You can say, well, that's being priced into the market, and to a degree, I would say I agree with that, but still, a trade deal with China would be huge, and a trade deal with all these other countries would be big as well. But the way I see it in terms of the momentum right now in Q2, it's very, very good. The approval is, you could say, well, it's minus 4.3. That's not great. Trump, you have to understand, is extremely polarizing. And this happened when Trump first came in 2017. The numbers that we saw for Trump were like nothing we've ever seen. I mean, you could say, well, he lost the popular vote, so there's going to be more people that dislike him, so his approval is going to start lower. But normally presidents get leeway. I mean, Biden started like plus 17. That's how crazy it is. You can say, well, Trump had some leeway here, plus 5, plus 6, which is not what we saw his first term. But the thing that we're seeing with Trump now in his second term is there's this core support that he has that he's not losing. In every poll that I've seen in terms of would you vote for Trump right now today based off of what you've seen the first few months, and with all of the turmoil we've seen to where they've been able to spin it with the economy down, everything like that, I've told people, wait, it's going to go back up. It's going to be fine. We're trying to lay the foundation with the lower inflation, with the lower interest rates, with introducing QE, which is going to be forced with the 10-year yield being higher. All of these things are going to happen. These are all components to an amazing economy. And as long as you don't deal too much with crazy inflation, with all of the tariffs, because we don't know exactly the way the tariffs are going to cause, it's impossible to know for sure how inflationary they would be. They may not be at all. And so far we've seen to where they haven't really been inflationary, although there is a lag in terms of the inflation effects we see on tariffs. But I mean, the tariffs have already been brought back down. So how much inflation can they really cause? Doesn't seem like too much. So all of that, I mean, that's going to calm the Fed. And I think that's why I'm looking at like the late July meeting. It's like July 30th, I think is when they're going to cut. People say, well, they're not going to cut until September. We'll see. A lot of it's based off of the metrics we see on inflation over the next few months and the amount of trade deals they're able to get done. They want the administration to get the trade deals done. But with something like this, I mean, you go from, to me, it ballooned like crazy, and it's already come down to at least the disapproval. It was a minus 7.2 spread. Now it's like 4.2. So, it's a 3-point swing in the span of 2 weeks, which is really, really impressive. And you can see even, what is this thing? End of first term. Oh, yeah. So this is, I guess they have Trump's approval in between his first term and his second term charted. That's interesting. But it is pretty crazy to see Trump with I mean, you can see the difference in terms of the first term versus second term. I mean, he started off basically with a negative, and he's already doing better this term. And I think we're really going to see, and most liberals are not going to be ready for this. Trump will have a positive approval rating, and we don't know because there's all these geopolitical events. You can't say for sure, but Trump very likely will have a positive approval rating within 3 or 4 months. And that's just based off of people say, well, what about the polls? They're not going to allow it. Trump is just way more likable now. He just is. People like him more. People have a much bigger appetite to deport illegals from the country. And I just think Trump is going to have a much better approval rating within 3 or 4 months. A much better. You're talking like 52, 50. This might be flipped. He might have like a +3, +4% approval rating in a few months based off of what we have in the pipeline if it comes to fruition. So with Trump, I would say right now, and then you've got, I mean, so many things in terms of the peace that he's trying to create within the Middle East, easing the sanctions on Syria, saying that, well, we just want there to be, putting pressure on Netanyahu to try and work out some type of deal between Israel and Palestine. Netanyahu saying it's not going to happen. They're going to go harder against Palestine. But there's been some conflicting reports on what Trump wants within that area. Originally, it came out that, well, he wanted to displace the Palestinians. Now, maybe not so much. We'll see. But the point of it is it's obvious that Trump wants peace within the Middle East under his rule. And so I think there's going to be a lot of things that get accomplished over the next few months that really point to that. Whether or not we can come to any meaningful ceasefire in Russia, Ukraine, that'll be another thing that the administration for sure can swing, and we know that they will because they've been working very hard for that, and they've laid out ultimatums. They've said this needs to happen. We put out our plan, get together. Now Zelensky and Putin are meeting on Thursday, so that's tomorrow. Trump said maybe he'll fly to Turkey to possibly meet him. That's where they're meeting supposedly face to face. I don't know if anything will get worked out. Based on what both leaders have said, it seems very unlikely because of their demands in terms of the territorial acquisition that Russia thinks. They already think they control the oblast because their military does after they invaded. And Ukraine wants all of that back, and they want Crimea back. Now, maybe that's just negotiating leverage, but that's one of those things to where I don't know if something is going to be worked out anytime soon. Hopefully it is. But the worst case is, we're funding Ukraine. We have a minerals deal with Ukraine. We're going to be getting that money back. So Trump is proactive with these things rather than just giving money. A lot of the European countries get their money back. Why can't we? Well, now, because of Trump, we will be getting our money back through rare earths and minerals. It's an obvious thing that just requires a little bit of work in terms of negotiations, and you work on the minerals deal, and they were able to get it done. So when it comes to Trump's approval rating right now, I do think it's going to go up pretty significantly. It's already going back up. They flooded the zone. They really flooded it back in late April when they tried to say that, well, he's the most unapproved president in 100 days or whatever. They're trying to get that. They were trying to swing a headline narrative, and so they all released him. But we know that Trump, you look at any big-time pollster, they'll say, do you still support Trump if you voted for him? And it's like 99% still support Trump. And this is known, even Don Lemon interviewing black people saying, yeah, I voted for him, I still support him. So people in general still support Trump. And this is really, we dealt with the turmoil with the tariffs and everything like that. If anything, that immediately brought inflation down. You can look at this. Do I still have this up here? Here it is right here. This is the trueflation. And you can say, well, this is also based on energy, which the Fed doesn't take into account, and food. And energy is certainly down. Energy right now is Trump's secret weapon when it comes to these inflation numbers and how low they are. But inflation really has been down. You could say indirectly tariffs have caused this 100%, this rapid decrease. You had inflation, the trueflation, sitting at around 3%. Even when Trump comes in, it's at 2.5%. That's trueflation. You think they're cutting off of that, off of what energy was? But now with energy way down, with crude oil down, you're really going to see the cuts. They've cut in the UK. They've got 2.5%. It's not apples to apples. It's a little bit different of a comparison, but still, they've got a higher overall trueflation, and they cut their rates. So I think Powell has already said they're going to be cutting. But the point here is that we will be entering a better time in terms of the market. We will hopefully be creating more peace within the Middle East, creating peace in eastern Ukraine. And Trump's really going to start passing some of these initiatives. Trump's got his new big bill that's coming. That's going to include the tax cuts that he promised during his campaign, which is the no tax on tips, the no tax on Social Security, the no tax on overtime. The military budget supposedly now is $1.01 trillion, which it'll stimulate the economy. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't want to see it increase $150 billion, especially considering our deficit. How much can Trump make up in terms of tariff revenue? That'll be decided on these renegotiations. We don't know, because Trump is going to keep tariffs on these countries. He kept tariffs on the UK. It just depends how much. And in terms of, you're going to have to offset the revenue you lose through some of these, the elimination of some of these taxes, like no tax on it. It's funny how they're like, oh, the new tax cuts are all for the rich people and the upper class. Well, then, what do you make of the no tax on overtime? You think rich people are going to be benefiting from that? No tax on tips? You think servers are rich people? It's a joke. It's just pure gaslighting. And even in Trump's first term, the crazy thing is, it's just the mischaracterization, because they use Trump as like this billionaire. They think he just gives all these people cuts. He put on and imposed taxes on rich people, especially in liberal states, in certain circumstances that created more revenue for the government. And he's talked about, saying, I don't know if I'd like them taxing the ultra rich, but I wouldn't be against it. In his second term, Trump said that because he knows we have to generate revenue somehow. And we don't want the taxes to be the answer, because that's what liberals always say, just up the taxes. There can be other revenue sources. There can be less spending, although I don't know, it seems like there's going to be more military spending. There can be other avenues we do in terms of creating revenue, just like the tariff situation, how much money they're able to get through tariffs. But this is all stuff that Trump is open to. So, I think Trump's approval rating it's looking better, and it's only going to improve as the months go on with everything in the hopper. And so, I mean, even in this poll, it's got Dems sitting at +9 in terms of independents. But there, how many undecided are there? I mean, 40-31. I mean, it's like 21% undecided. That's pretty ridiculous. And then you've got, I was going to look at something. Face of the Democratic Party, AOC, 26%. It's funny. No one is also at 26%. Other is at 22%. There's no face of the Democratic Party at all right now. Jasmine Crockett, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, like retirement. He's the face of the DNC. But yeah, that just shows you where their current party is in terms of their health. I maintain, I don't think it'll be any of these people, honestly. I think somebody comes out of left field for the Democrats in 2028. I just can't really see it being any of the... I mean, people say Newsom. I know Buttigieg has gotten thrown around. But either way, guys, make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.